as if I don't know why so many people are here today. But you're here notwithstanding. And it's good to remember that despite being here for a sentimental and personal purpose, we're here for a larger purpose each and every week. We're here for the purpose that a colleague once reminded me, to rediscover the gift of a free religious community, by which he means you get to decide. No guilt attaches, no shame is assigned. If you're here or not here, you choose it. And that choice is meaningful and animates your spirit. He goes on to say that we are here to renew our faith in holiness, goodness, and the beauty of life. Because it all wears off from time to time, doesn't it? The day-to-dayness of the chores, of the disappointments. And we begin to wonder whether or not we should believe in these things. So you come here to say, I'm going to give it one more go. And you come and find these people, and you say, okay, it's worth it. He goes on to say that we are here to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the full heart. Don't you love that distinction? We are ever ready to learn, but we come with fullness of being, not just emptiness. To rekindle the flame of memory and hope. And to reclaim a vision. He says, a vision of an earth made fair with all her people one, which seems too distant from times to time, sometimes more distant than it used to be. But if we cease to believe it, it will never arrive. And so we come here as an act of faith, sometimes in things that we do not know as much as things that we do know. And so we are a community, whether you're here for the first or the second or the 2000th time. And we make it an hour of worship as we sing. Whatsoever things are true and honorable, think on these things. Whatsoever things are just and pure, think on these things. Whatsoever things are lovely and of good report, think on these things. If there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Welcome. Welcome. Come in. Willkommen. Bienvenue, like the guy says in the musical. All the languages for all the minds and all the hearts. This is Fountain Street Church, a place where we seek to free our minds, to grow our souls, and to change the world. A task which is unending, and gratefully so. My name is Fred Wooden. I'm one of the clergy who serve here. I am glad to see all of you whose faces I do know. I'm especially glad to see the faces I don't know. And please stick around afterward, especially over in our social hall where there is coffee to be enjoyed and company to be savored. Our wonderful guest speaker will be there, and therefore you have no excuse to leave early. I wish not only to welcome Matthew Cockrum, who served us for 5 years. I think you were here from, 07?
The end of December of 2006.
December of 6 through 11.
Through April of 12.
You're here a good long time. And appreciated in your presence and missed in your absence. And you're back in town. Fortunate because you have family here. And that means that we could snag you into our orbit for just a day or so. But I want to make sure we acknowledge Robin Connell, one of the top jazz musicians in West Michigan. I'm pretty sure she's one of the top jazz musicians in all of Michigan. And a part of this community as well. And how's Benny and how's Paul? They're doing okay. They're really a trio, all three of them together. It's just amazing. And I want to call attention also to the things you can find in your order of worship, things that go on here during the week. And also if you're visiting with us for whatever reason and you're wondering, is this the place I should call my spiritual home? I don't know the answer. But if you're here, chances are you're asking. And if you'd like to know more and you'd like to ask some of those questions, you can talk to me afterward. I'll be delighted to spend a moment or two with you.
Good morning. It is good to be back among you. The words that we started with this morning in our responsive affirmation, think on these things, might seem odd when the topic is confession. We're talking about whatever is good and true, whatever is right and just. Think on these things. But perhaps they will make more sense as we go. When was the last time you confessed? Now, I don't mean to a priest or a preacher, to a spouse or a friend, or even anonymously online or to the stranger next to you. We'll get more deeply into confession in a few minutes, but for now I'd like to invite you to explore a few different kinds of confession, a few different prayers. Our first reading for our purposes today comes to us from the Roman Catholic tradition. As part of the regular liturgy or order of worship, and those of you with Catholic backgrounds might find yourself able to recite this prayer from memory and might be cursing me for drudging up this part of your memory. But the Catholic confession goes like this. I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have sinned through my own fault. In my thoughts and in my words, in what I have done and in what I have failed to do. And I ask Blessed Mary, ever Virgin, and all the angels and saints, and you, my brothers and sisters, to pray for me to the Lord our God. A second reading, a second confessional prayer, this one from the Jewish tradition. During my time in Jewish worshiping communities, I experienced some version of this both in a daily morning prayer and also as part of the High Holy Days, a time at the cusp of the year when observant Jews seek to atone for the sins and misdeeds of the past and to set a course for a better path in the year ahead. An English translation. Please, Lord our God and God of our fathers, let our prayer come before you, and do not conceal yourself from our supplications. For we are not brazen-faced and stiff-necked to say before you that we are righteous and have not sinned. Rather, we have sinned. And here is where the breast beating literally begins in the prayer. We have been crooked and transgressed. We and our fathers and the people of our household, we were guilty. We rebelled, we stole. We spoke slander and evil speech. We caused iniquity. We caused evil. We did intentional bad. We did violence. We accused falsely and deceitfully. We provided bad advice. We spoke falsity. We became angry. We rebelled. We mocked. We rebelled against your word. We provoked. We committed adultery. We left the path. We transgressed deliberately. We damaged. We caused pain. We caused pain to father and mother. We were stiff-necked. We were evil and we destroyed. We did despicable things. We made people err. We left your commandments and your good laws, and they were not worthy of us. And you are righteous on everything that happens to us, for you did truth, and we acted wickedly. I can see maybe a little stiffness in you in this. Maybe not stiff-necked, but it makes you sit up a little bit and go, whoa. So I want to invite you to actually participate in reading some of these, because there are confessional prayers in your hymnal. You may or may not ever have noticed them. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. I'm just saying. So pull out your hymnal, if you would, and turn to 476. Number 476. I think this might even be in a section in the hymnal that says prayers and confessions or something like that. Yeah? So this was penned by von Ogden Vogt, who was a Unitarian minister and liturgist of the 20th century. And his orders of service, I learned in seminary, always included an element of confession. Because according to Vogt, he said, this is a necessary part of the flow of worship each week, how we gather, what we need to be doing, how we need to be in the world, to show up and acknowledge we're not perfect, and then to seek that which we are aiming towards. So this prayer was one of his. And as we read this together, I want to invite you to notice how it feels in your body to say these words, as well as perhaps the stories that jump up in your head about, I didn't do that, I'm not, that's not, but what? Yeah, notice that too. And then notice what's under it. So if you would read with me. Before the wonders of life, we acknowledge our failures to see and to revere. Before the sanctities of life, we are ashamed of our disrespects and indignities. Before the gifts of life, we own that we have made choices of lesser goods, and here today seek the gifts of the Spirit. Before the heroisms of life, we would be enlarged to new devotion. And finally, one more prayer, also in that same section, penned in observance of a United Nations Environmental Sabbath, an attempt at global recognition of the ways that humanity has sinned against the common good and the earth that we share. Again, I invite you, as you read this aloud, to listen not only with your ears and your mind, but with your body, as you join in reading this prayer of sorrow. Number 478. We have forgotten who we are. We have alienated ourselves from the unfolding of the cosmos. We have become estranged from the movements of the earth. We have turned our backs on the cycles of life. We have sought only our own security. We have exploited simply for our own ends. We have distorted our knowledge. We have abused our power. Now the land is barren, and the waters are poisoned, and the air is polluted. Now the forests are dying, and the creatures are disappearing. and the humans are despairing. We ask forgiveness. We ask for the gift of remembering. We ask for the strength to change. This concludes this morning's readings. I think Glenn Campbell was my first crush. Yours too? Yeah? Anybody else? I remember as a little kid running around kissing his face on the record. Sorry to disturb the mood. So one of the things that I really cherish that I learned here from you, from this community, was how to be silent. The time of meditation, the time of gathering amidst all of the words and the beautiful music, to still ourselves and to listen to what is within us and among us and beyond us. And so I invite you now to take a few moments to turn in silence towards that which you find most holy, that we might join in prayer, meditation, and reflection. Most holy beloved, we know you in our pulse and in our breathing. In our stillness and in our shifting. In racing thoughts and in gathered silence. We come to this time and this place to these people to be refreshed and renewed and reunited. In these few rare moments, reveal to us what really is. Show to us what really matters. Help us in these moments and this hour to open our hands and our minds and our hearts that we might receive that which is revealed about what we truly need and what we truly have and who we truly are. We know that we live in a world of beauty and of sorrow, of tragedy and of triumph, of possibility and disappointment. And so give to us in these moments the courage and the humility to know and to be known, and to know how to be used in the world. To these imperfect words we add the silent intentions of our hearts. May our prayers be heard, may our hearts be restored, and may our hope be renewed. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be.
That I know where the sycamores grow and daffodils have their fun, where the cares of the day seem to slowly fade away and the glow of the evening sun. Peace when the day is done. If I go there real late, let my mind meditate on everything to be done. If I search deep inside, let my conscience be my guide. Then the answers are sure to come. Don't have to worry none. When you find peace of mind, leave your worries behind and don't say that it can't be done. With a new point of view, life's true meaning comes to you, and the freedom you seek is won. Peace is for everyone. peace is for everyone.
Strange to be back in here. Wonderful. My mother and father-in-law were married in this chapel in, oh God, how long ago? 40 years ago? Later this month. Fountain club on the floor, the carpet and the candles. Careful not to get the candle wax on the carpet. Right? So many memories. So much of this place is a part of me, and for which I am grateful. I guess I start by confessing that to you. Confession has played an important part on my religious path, and perhaps it still does. It was during my adolescence when friends invited me to a youth overnight at their Catholic parish. I was unchurched at the time and had this formless religious curiosity, and I was longing for a place to explore and a community to explore with. And after an evening of honestly unremarkable games and a restless night of gender-segregated sleeping, the idea of trans was not even a part of the public conversation at that time, let alone in small-town South Dakota. After that evening, we awoke and we were herded into the sanctuary of stained glass and pews. And my peers, all of whom I learned were in the process, I know, of confirmation, then awaited their turn with a priest who would hear their confessions. I, on the other hand, was free to explore. With a gift of a glow-in-the-dark rosary clutched in my sweaty adolescent palm, and the texts of Our Father and Hail Mary tucked into my pants pocket, I knew that I wanted to know those prayers as well as they did. And I knew that I wanted to know what went on behind those confessional doors. While they confessed and waited to confess and recovered from confessing, I wandered the church grounds and eventually climbed the hillside against which the church was built. And perched atop it was Mary, Virgin Mother of God, carved out of white marble, broken-toed foot atop the snake of Satan, arms outstretched, awaiting me. It was the first of many climbs that I made to that Mary, an unexpected welcome to a place of quiet and reflection. While my peers confessed their teenage sins, whatever those were, I looked up at Mary, and this unexpected welcome, this invitation to consider my life from a different perspective and to begin again. Years later, when I was confirmed in the Catholic Church in college, I made my first confession with Father Chuck, who still tells me he thinks I should be a priest. This was not in a booth or behind a screen, but in a private room tucked off of the wooden chapel of the St. John Newman Parish on the campus of South Dakota State University. How does this work? I asked, a bit nervous to finally have access to this mysterious secret sacrament. Well, Chuck responded, you can sit on the other side of the screen if you'd like, or we can just sit here and talk, face to face. It's up to you. Well, aren't there like special prayers? I asked. Shouldn't I start with something like, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned? It's been so long since my last confession. It must have been something I'd seen in a movie somewhere. Well, those parts aren't important, I remember him saying. What's important is what's in your heart, what you have to say. We confess not because God needs us to, but because we need to. And we confess to another person because what we need most is God with skin on. It was the first and the most formal of my confessions over my college and Catholic career. Eventually, confession became conversations over meals with Father Chuck, tears and laughter, embraces and encouragement, acceptance and love. And so began and continued my relationship to confession, and my valuing it, and my understanding it really, and experiencing it as simply God with skin on. A recognition that it was something that I needed to better know and to be known. And so it continues. Years later, coming into liberal religious communities, I was introduced to the notions of confession with a more social and communal feel. I entered liberal religious community in the Bush then Clinton then Bush years, and the texts referenced more often than sacred scriptures of Bibles or Torahs or Gitas or Sutras or Suras were the New York Times. Recent writings off the bestsellers list, poems by Mary Oliver and Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, or contemporary writers of politics, poetry, and science. The closing of the American mind and the death of liberalism were decried more often than any of our individual shortcomings. And if we were encouraged to confess ever, it was certainly more along the lines of privilege and class, race and gender, ability and orientation. There seemed to be more shame, not less, in this. And more despair, too. Less hope and less certainty about what to do. God with skin on became more fearful, surprisingly. And confession itself seemed to become a less humane act. Now, the playful, cheeky part of me, I get that from you, Fred, cheeky, thank you. Another thing I'm grateful for. The playful, cheeky part of me feels called to confess to you that as a lapsed liberal, I don't read the New York Times or even my local paper. I don't watch MSNBC, CNN, C-SPAN, or Democracy Now! I don't go to symphonies, operas, or the ballet. I don't keep up with the latest news in science and technology. I've never read Joseph Campbell, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, or watched Neil deGrasse Tyson. Actually, I watched one of his episodes. I don't go to enough marches. I don't have the right yard signs, or certainly enough of them. I haven't called or written my elected or non-elected representatives. In short, I am a bad liberal. Bad, 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 bad. Now, how many Hail Marys or Our Fathers should I say? How many acts of contrition? But the non-cheeky part of me, the less than snarky, the less than comfortable with my apathy and hopelessness, that part of me still desperately wants to confess. To walk up a hillside and look up, even if into marble eyes, and to get the sense of being seen and valued, even in my limitations and my shortcomings. Of being believed in, that more is possible from me. We are in a time, I think, where we are in need of confession. Heck, it's even possible that we are in a time as a nation, as a race, as humans, that's all that we seem to ever do. The alarms sounded in recent years, even looking back to the Occupy movement and then followed by Black Lives Matter and Women's March on Washington, the Standing Rock Resistance, the Dakota Access Pipeline, outrage at the potential of Russian election interference as though we've never interfered in elections. Perhaps all of these are part of larger confession, larger confessions that we as a people, as a species, are beginning to feel and see the need to make. Perhaps we are at the edge of an evolutionary cusp. Am I too naive saying that? Perhaps it's not just about personal sins and shortcoming, but that we as humans need to be able to look to each other and the world and say, we have failed. We are failing. Forgive us. Help us find a new way. Perhaps in this way it really isn't about only personal sins and shortcomings or affairs and infidelities of lies and more lies and betrayals. Perhaps we are coming to a place where we are able and ready and needing to confess our sins as a species against the greater good, against our fellow humans, against the earth we share. And perhaps we need, this ancient need is still a need to see and be seen by God with skin on, as human and flawed and hopeful and failing. Perhaps we need, as in the Jewish prayer of confession, to feel our own fists beating against our chest, even as our head says, "I never did that," because we know we are part of the people who have and are and still do. Because perhaps it is not about knowing so much that we have committed the sins, but that they are still being committed and we are accountable. Perhaps we need, as in the High Holy Days liturgy, to be given the opportunity to lay down on the ground, face down, have you ever done that in a worship service? That's time number 2 for me. The first time was High Holy Days, and it felt weird and humbling and right to be in a room with others who were all acknowledging we have fallen short. And though we are not in charge, we are responsible and need to be seen. It is up to us and nobody but us to atone, to account, to take responsibility, perhaps even more importantly than to ask for forgiveness. Not to blame and to shame, not to assign acts of contrition and penance, but rather to see and be seen by the humans around us as us, and all of us as much a part of the problem and the brokenness as them. Why is there such resistance to confession? Why is our first response defense and denial? I mean, and I know I'm about to open up another can of sermonic worms here. We're not going to go there, but what would have happened, really, when allegations of meetings with Russians first surfaced? What would have happened if Team Trump would have just said, "Oops, yeah, you're right. That was wrong, stupid, sorry"? What would have happened, and what could we have given our attention to instead? It's almost as if in our failure, in our unwillingness to confess, we are keeping lies going, which require, as we learned as children, more lies and more lies and more. But what happens when we stop lying about ourselves to ourselves and about what we have done and are doing? What happens then? On the other side of confession comes freedom. This is what Brian Stevenson, lawyer, founder, and executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative and the author of Just Mercy, suggests is what comes next. On the other side of confession comes freedom. I'm not interested in punishing America for its history. I want to liberate America, he is quoted as saying. And now I'll confess I've not read the book, and I wasn't at the conference where he said it. But on the other side of confession is freedom? Freedom for what? Well, he has some helpful answers. He says that to put our freedom to use, we must do 4 things. 1, get proximate to the poor, excluded, neglected, and abused. Get proximate to them. 2, change the narratives that underlie racism and other inequalities. 3, stay hopeful about creating justice. Stay hopeful. Maybe that alone. Stay hopeful. Can that be your mantra, even as you're confessing? Stay hopeful. Say it with me. Stay hopeful. There you go. Now say it under your breath to yourself. Stay. Now turn to your neighbor and say, stay hopeful. The other neighbor, stay. Okay, good. Now you can do it as much as you need, but that could be a mantra right there. That's number 3, stay hopeful. And 4, you just did. Be willing to do uncomfortable things. So get proximate, change narratives, stay hopeful, and be willing to do uncomfortable things. To get proximate to those who are excluded, neglected, abused, requires that first we notice our distance to begin with. How proximate are we, am I, by where we live? Who's in our life? Who's in our work? Who do we engage with? Who do we avoid, ignore in our houses of worship, in our lives? Changing narratives requires that we notice that there are narratives and that we most likely benefit from some of them. Which is why we need to stay hopeful as opposed to being apathetic. So easy to do post-election for some of us. Some of us have been energized and others of us have just said, whatever. I'm going to stop reading the news, stop going to marches, stop following. It's a lost cause. I'll wait another 4, God forbid, 8 years. And 4, be willing to do the uncomfortable. Willing, not willful. Willingness, I learned in my spiritual direction training, also a gift of being here with you, is much softer and open as to being willful in the world. Be willing to do the uncomfortable. These are the freedoms, this author says, and the responsibilities on the other side of confession. Wherever we find ourselves in political and social spectrums. In the end, though, I would argue we all need confession. And the world needs us to confess. Not to wallow in self-pity and guilt, not to set ourselves up as better than because we have confessed, but rather to be put to work, to be changed, to be uncomfortable. Now, of all of the memories of this place, and you among them, one that haunts me most often is a quotation on the wall, or on the social hall on a window, that I had forgotten, and so I was running there to write it down this morning, and it's covered by cardboard. The one quote that's covered by cardboard. So I asked Fred, what do you remember what this quote is? And he said, oh yes, it's John Herman Randall. And it says something like this: by this you shall know or judge a person or man. How did they love? So all of this basically boils down to 2 things, I think. Showing up and being love. And the times we fail in that are the times that we must confess. Everyone else can already see it. Why won't we? Because those 4 challenges, even of staying hopeful, are so hard, of acknowledging narratives. But showing up and being love, friends, that's what confession is for. To put it another way in closing, and in the words of a contemporary poet, Thomas Centolea, who was inspired by a Christian mystic come to be known as St. John of the Cross, I can't say his last name, Centolea wrote, in the evening, we shall be examined on love. And it won't be multiple choice, though some of us would prefer it that way. Neither will it be easy, which tempts us to run on when we should be sticking to the point, if not together. In the evening there shall be implications. Our fear will change to complications. No cheating will be told, and we'll try to figure out the cost of being true to ourselves. In the evening, when the sky has turned that certain blue, the blue of exam books, blue of no more daily evasions, we shall climb the hill as the light empties, and park our tired bodies on the bench above the city and try to fill in all the blanks. And we won't be tested like defendants on trial or cross-examined till one of us breaks down guilty as charged. No, in the evening, after the day has refused to testify, we shall be examined on love, like students who don't even recall signing up for the course and must now take their orals, forced to speak for once from the heart and not off the top of their heads. And when the evening is over and it's late, the student body asleep, even the great teachers retired for the night, we shall stay up and run back over the questions, each in our own way. What's true? What's false? What unknown quality will balance the equation? What would it mean years from now to look back and know we did not fail? In the evening, we shall be examined on love. We confess not because God needs us to, but because we need to. And we confess to one another because what we need most is God with skin on. So let us go, friends, living lives of confession to a world that is nothing less than that. God with skin on.